At any given time, the Imperial Harem in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace held about 400 women. These were girls, really, aged 13 to 25, purchased from slave markets or taken as trophies of war. They lived in unimaginable luxury and in unimaginable terror. Palace records, spanning from 1520 to 1680, reveal a horrifying statistic. Of those 400 women, only 3 would ever survive to old age. Just 3. 397 women, gone, disappeared, executed, drowned. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad luck. It was a carefully designed, bureaucratically efficient system of human disposal. The Ottoman Empire perfected a machine that consumed young women with the cold efficiency of a modern corporation. They had budget lines for murder, quality standards for execution, performance reviews for killers, and it all began each night with a simple silver tray. As the sun set over Istanbul, a ritual began. In the Sultan's private chambers, a silver tray was prepared. On it, small pieces of parchment, each bearing a woman's name. The Sultan often didn't even choose himself. That would be too much like taking responsibility. A high-ranking court official would perform the selection. It was a lottery where winning could mean losing your life. A name was drawn. That woman was summoned. But here's the first rule of this nightmare. Your body was not your own. If you were chosen, and the guards discovered you were on your monthly cycle, a biological function you couldn't control, you faced immediate consequences. The official record might list your cause of death as a sudden illness. The unofficial reality? You were strangled for being impure. But let's say you were deemed suitable. Your nightmare was just beginning. You'd be escorted to preparation chambers where you were surrounded by 12 trained medical inspectors. They would ask a single chilling question that determined your entire future. Should the seed be preserved? This wasn't poetry. This was a clinical evaluation of whether you, a human being, deserved to keep your reproductive organs. If the answer was no, procedures were scheduled. If yes, you went to the Sultan, knowing that if you failed to conceive within a specific time, you'd be back facing that terrible question again. The statistics are brutal. Only 10 women out of 400 would ever bear children. The rest existed in a state of perpetual waiting, knowing that being forgotten was actually the best-case scenario. Because being chosen repeatedly without producing an heir made you a liability. Palace records from March 3, 1652, show that 23 women were relocated in a single night. The official reason? Reassignment. Witness accounts from servants tell a different story, one that involves the dark, cold waters of the Bosphorus Strait. This system of psychological torture was intentional. Modern historians like Dr. Fatma Göçek found documents showing the randomness was carefully calibrated. They wanted women to feel just enough hope to prevent mass despair, but never enough to feel secure. It was psychological warfare perfected over centuries. It also turned victims against each other. Instead of uniting against their oppressors, women sabotaged rivals, reported on each other's biological schedules, and celebrated when others were relocated. The system was designed to create accomplices out of the oppressed. A French ambassador in 1675 wrote that women lived in such fear of the silver tray that many drank potions to damage their ability to bear children, preferring certain barrenness to the uncertainty of selection. Think about that. They were permanently destroying their own bodies to avoid the possibility of being chosen. But this horror required a sophisticated machinery of death, and the Ottomans were nothing if not creative. They employed professional stranglers, called the bostanci, or gardeners. Except instead of pruning roses, they pruned the Sultan's human garden. They were experts, trained in anatomy. They used a specific technique, 3 feet of silk cord, twisted 7 times for strength. The process was so standardized they had quality control. If a strangulation took longer than 45 seconds, the executioner was punished for causing unnecessary suffering. They had performance reviews for murder. The psychological torture was part of the protocol. Women marked for execution were told at sunset and killed at sunrise, given one night to write letters that would never be sent to families they'd never see again. For women who became pregnant without official permission, the fate was even more grotesque. The Deniz Sefasai, the sea punishment. They would be sewn alive into leather sacks, along with several cats. The cats weren't for company. They were there to create panic and movement, ensuring the woman couldn't hold her breath or float. A special black boat would row out to a specific spot in the Bosphorus on moonless nights, and the sack would be tossed overboard. The currents did the rest. From 1520 to 1680, records indicate at least 3,000 women met their end this way. The strait became such a common dumping ground that local fishermen developed superstitions, calling certain areas mermaid graveyards. And for those who weren't killed, there was a fate some considered worse: banishment to the Janissaries, the Old Palace. A French diplomat who visited in 1670 described it as a marble tomb filled with living ghosts. No visitors, no letters, no hope, just hundreds of discarded women waiting to die in silence so complete you can hear hearts breaking. The empire kept meticulous ledgers. A silk strangulation cost 3 akshay, the price of a good meal. A drowning expedition cost 20, including boat rental and crew wages. Murder had a budget line. But wait, it gets worse, because the palace didn't just consume women, it devoured children. If you thought the harem was horrific, meet the Devşirme, the child collection system that makes modern human trafficking look amateur. Every few years, Ottoman officials would fan out across Christian territories, Greece, Serbia, Bulgaria. Their mission: to abduct boys aged 8 to 18. They had specifications, height requirements, dental examinations, intelligence tests. The Ottoman Empire had quality control standards for child abduction. Parents were forced to watch as officials evaluated their sons like livestock. Selected boys were marked with a tattoo or brand, and began a death march to Istanbul, chained together in groups of. The journey was designed for attrition. Weak boys died on the road, saving the empire future investment. Records show a 20% mortality rate during transport. 1 in 5 boys died before training even began. Those who survived faced psychological demolition. They were given new Muslim names, forcibly circumcised, and forbidden from speaking their native languages or practicing their faith. The goal was to break them and remake them into fanatically loyal servants of the empire, the infamous Janissaries, elite soldiers who would later raid Christian villages to steal more children. The oppressed became the oppressors. The prettiest, most intelligent boys weren't destined for the army. They were sent to the palace schools, the Enderun. On paper, it was a prestigious academy teaching languages, mathematics, and arts. In practice, it was a grooming factory. A French observer in 1650 wrote, "The beautiful boys are passed around like communal property. Those who resist face beatings or starvation. Those who comply receive privileges. The teachers not only know, they orchestrate it." Palace records show these guardianships were registered, taxed, and transferred like property contracts. Boys were dressed in makeup and paraded before officials who would bid for private tutoring sessions. The school took a 60% cut of the earnings. These children were literally saving money earned from their own abuse. Palace doctors' records tell a horrific story: rectal fissures, throat inflammations, and melancholic temperament requiring isolation, a euphemism for suicide attempts. The suicide rate was staggering, but hidden. Boys who jumped from towers were recorded as dying from accidents. This system, this entire 500-year nightmare of industrialized abuse, didn't end because of a moral awakening. It ended because the Ottoman Empire collapsed. Even then, it fought to survive. When reforms were finally introduced in the 19th century, the strongest resistance came from within the harem itself. Older women who had survived by becoming part of the system saw freedom as a threat to their power. Stockholm Syndrome had become institutional culture. When the Young Turk Revolution finally stormed the palace in 1908, they found a horror story. Women who had been there since they were children, who knew no other life, who begged to stay in their silk prison because the outside world terrified them more. One woman, freed in 1909, said, "They tell me I am free now. Free to do what? I know 13 ways to pleasure a man I never loved. I speak 4 languages but have no one to talk to. They gave us education for slavery and called it culture." Today, Topkapi Palace is a museum. 3 million tourists visit every year. They walk through the harem quarters, now beautifully restored, snapping photos of the gorgeous tiles and golden fixtures. The tour guides mention concubines and sultans' mothers. They don't mention the silk cords or the Bosphorus drownings. The gift shop sells Ottoman-themed jewelry and harem nights perfume. The word slavery appears nowhere. When the palace became a museum in 1924, workers discovered hidden rooms behind false walls. They found human remains under marble floors. The exact number of bodies was never publicized. We are often told not to judge the past by modern standards, that every empire did terrible things, but this argument is a deflection.
The Ottomans didn't just own slaves.
They industrialized human disposal. They didn't just abuse women, they bureaucratized femicide. They created a system where ordinary people, fathers, husbands, bureaucrats, could administer extraordinary evil because the paperwork said it was okay. So what does this 500-year nightmare teach us? It teaches us that horror becomes normalized when it's wrapped in tradition and justified by religion. It shows us that when economic interests override human rights, humans lose. It proves that victims can become accomplices to survive. The lessons of the harem are not historical artifacts, they are warnings. Human trafficking generates $150 billion annually. Forced marriage affects 15 million women. Honor killings claim thousands of lives every year. The methods have evolved, but the mentality remains. The mentality that one human can own another. The women of the Ottoman harem can't speak for themselves. The children of the Devşirme left no memoirs. The victims have no graves to visit, but their suffering echoes through history, warning us that civilization and barbarity can coexist, that beauty can mask horror, that humans can normalize any atrocity. If this disturbed you, good. If this angered you, better. If this made you grateful for your freedom, for the fact that you can go to bed tonight without fearing a silver tray, then best. Because forgetting enables repetition, but remembering enables prevention. The Ottoman Palace of Nightmares is now a museum. Let's make sure it stays that way. In the past, studied, but never repeated. Remembered, but never romanticized. 400 entered. 3 survived. Don't forget their story. What historical romance do you think hides a systematic horror? Let me know in the comments below. Share this with someone who needs to know that history's beauty often came at a horrific cost. And subscribe for more hidden histories that challenge everything you thought you knew. Stay curious, stay critical, stay free.